So here in Canada, every single individual is assigned or issued a name. And therefore, if they are assigned or issued a name through the registration of a birth, they are therefore a beneficiary of that name and not the owner of that name. The government is the one who has assigned you your name, and therefore the government is the owner of that name. Now, the name that they have assigned you is not just a name. It is what we call, or what we would describe as a person, a legal entity. Now, when you look at your name, you think that it is you, but in reality, it doesn't really represent you. It represents an artificial person that's been created by law and is what you are allowed to, or what you operate under or through here in the commercial world. Now, that legal person that you operate through, it's been given certain rights and freedoms of a human being. That's what the legal dictionary describes it as. It actually states that a legal person, an artificial person, is given certain rights and duties of a human being. And it says that it is a legal entity, real or imaginary, and it's been given certain legal rights, more or less, of a human being. A human being is born free and has the capacity to remain free, without any obligations to any domestic charters or international charters. That's a human being's right. However, a legal person is controlled. It starts out by saying that, well, I accept to be a Canadian citizen, or I accept the designation of Canadian citizen. When you look into the Canadian Citizenship Act of Canada, you will find that the oath that a person must take in order to become a citizen is that of a pledge of allegiance and of servanthood or servitude to the Queen, Her Majesty, and her successors, or the ones who are representing her here in Canada. So by taking the designation of Canadian citizen, you render yourself, you place an obligation upon yourself to follow what the Queen decides will be the laws here in Canada. Now, you, as a human being, have no obligation to enter into recognition as a legal person or as a Canadian citizen. They push the fact here in Canada that as a Canadian citizen you are offered much freedoms and much rights under that designation. However, it's just the opposite. As a human being, you have a lot more rights and freedoms, fundamental rights and fundamental freedoms that are available to you and that are intrinsic to who you are, to your nature, than are available to you as a legal person. If you look into the Financial Administration Act of Canada, in Article 19.1, it gives you a description of how a legal person obtains certain rights and freedoms, or certain permission here in Canada, and that is through the expression of paying Her Majesty and her servants certain amount of money in order to receive a permit or a license or another certificate of authorization that gives you the right to express whatever it is you're seeking to express. So, for example, and I use this a lot, if you're going to go fishing, you as a legal person need to apply for a permit, get the permission from Her Majesty on behalf of her minister in order for you to be able to go fishing. You will pay a certain amount of money and they will give you a license or a permit, and that will give you the right or the benefit to go and fish. Now that operation of law expresses itself in most everything that we do. For example, if you want to drive, the same operation of law. You will go and sign up to one of the driving schools or one of the places to go get a permit, and you will pay a certain amount of money, and in turn they will give to you or issue to you, to your name, to the legal person, a certificate, a permit, which gives the person, that name, the permission to exercise a right or a privilege or a benefit which he has paid for in the form of driving. Now, this is continually going on with everything that we are allowed to exercise here in Canada. No matter what it is that you seek to do, You are under obligation in one form or another to hand over money. To hand over money. The legal person, from the beginning, it's been a source of revenue for those who have created this system. It is a way for those who are sitting in power and who are sitting in riches to take from you and to take from your family through your energy, in the disguise of saying that this is the way it has to be. This is natural. This is the way the system is. With the recent celebration of the Queen's Jubilee, her reign on the throne here in Canada, and her monarch reign, there has been some debate going on within the government and the government ministers. And I've read some reports where some are saying that they think it's about time that the monarchy and Her Majesty is removed from anything that has to do with being Canadian or here in Canada. That's a pretty hard goal to accomplish, considering that most laws, statutes, enactments, and regulations start off by saying, therefore, Her Majesty enacts on behalf of such and such. These laws are all about Her Majesty. The Constitution Act of Canada 1867 is fully about Her Majesty. We carry around images and idolatry in our pockets of money with her picture on it. The armies here in Canada are called Her Majesty's Armed Forces. This is all about the monarchy. This is all about Her Majesty and her kingdom. And for those to say that we need to get the monarchy out of the Canadian system, I kind of agree. But the goal and what you're asking for, it will be very, very difficult. First and foremost, all the human beings here in Canada, we have to vote a constitution in, province by province, and then countrywide. A constitution of laws, if you will, that will govern us, and not made on behalf of the monarchy or through their regulations. It would be wise and best that we built this upon common law, that we built this constitution that the people would vote in based on common law, and not based upon commercial capitalism or corporate greed, if you will. We've seen the expression of that already all around us here in our society. We've seen what a commercial system has to offer us on individual levels and has to offer our families. And I'm sure there are some that have succeeded and they've made multi-million dollars and they think they're satisfied. They have the latest toys and all of that. That's fine. But let me tell you something. That's not what life was about. You got caught up in a deception, and in being caught up in that deception, you succeeded. So great for you. But life was not about that. Because if you sit down and you think for a minute, and you strip away this commercial system, this debt-based rhythm system, which we hopefully all know that it is a debt-based rhythm system, and eventually these cards will fall down, your accomplishments, your material wealth, and the things that you acquired, they won't offer you much once the system is gone. The only hope that you have is to take the value that you have now, that you think, which is in paper money, in paper dollars, and well, get things that would sustain your life and help your life. Then you can say that you were wise through this whole operation or through this whole situation that's going on. But in order for us to have a new system, in order for us to have something that is for the people, for the human beings, and not for the corporations, it will take a restart. Because we're too now, the laws and the government and those that sit in position of authority, they're too motivated by money. And they're too motivated by keeping control of the individual through the deception that's going on. So for us to ever hope that someone will get into a position of power and start to change things, I don't think that will ever happen. I think that it takes the reset button. And not by any of us doing anything, but just by the fact that the system that they built, like I said, it stands on a deck of cards and it's going to fall. Because of the fact that the only way for them to create money or to keep the system going is to keep individuals acquiring debt and acquiring debt. And right now they're saying here in Canada that most families, most homes have 150% of debt income already compared to what they're bringing in. Meaning that they get their paychecks right away, and right away they're running and paying down the minimum of all the credit that they owe. Whether it be for loans, or houses or cars or whatever, all just material goods. So there's not a much more room for the individuals here in Canada, the persons, to go and ask for more credit. So therefore the system can't keep growing. It can't keep growing and expanding. So eventually it's going to collapse in on itself. So when it does, it's going to be time, or it can produce a time for us to change everything. Change how we treat one another, because when people are in need, we can now begin to express more mercy and love and friendliness, compared to being shut in behind a computer and shut in behind electronical entertainment items. And it'll produce change because we can start to construct a system that's based upon, or is there for, our human rights and freedoms, and not to enrich the few in the corporate world, which is going on right now. And it's not a dream. It's not something that I sit here and think about and say, oh, this is a dream, dear. It's possible, and oh, I wish this would happen. No, this is a reality. I know through study and through looking and analyzing and discerning that the system will crash eventually. We all know, I'm sure most of us have heard, oh, Planet X is coming this year, and the Mayan calendar, and December 21st, 2012, whatever. Whether it's this year because of that, or the system just keeps going on and it collapses in on itself, it will fall down. And at that point is when we can make a change. All of us, together. Individually, but together in unity. That's what it will take. No more of this hierarchy over the humanity. No more of this hierarchy, this power that's dominating over humanity through deception and through words. And that's going to take more of us waking up on an individual level. More of us understanding now, before all this happens, just exactly what has been done to us. And just exactly what this system, how it affected us, and how it controlled us, and the consequences to it, and how it enriched the few. Therefore, when it's time to build something new, most of us will have an understanding or an awareness of what went wrong, not to repeat that process. We say that, we learn from the other generations. This is something that we need to learn and to understand. The focus of mankind has to change. It has to get off of this commercial system. Yes, we all have needs. We can't debate that. All of us have fundamental needs, and all of us have rights. But apart from that, just chasing after wealth and chasing after paper with a picture of the Queen, because it represents a value to you. A value meaning that I can take that and purchase a good now. It's not what life was about. And because in doing that, you push yourself away from relationships. You push yourself away from experiencing, let's just say, for example, nature. I meet people who have worked so hard in their life that they haven't even, for example, once camped, or thought about camping, or thought about going out in a boat in nature and spending a few days in nature. And when I speak to them about it, their concern is bugs, and oh, it's a hard life. But once they get over that and they go and experience that, most of them come back and they're like, wow, what a different life. I was caught up in the rat race, as you will, seeking my education as a lawyer, or seeking my education as whatever it may be, and I never thought about what else there is. Just motivated by money, just motivated by titles. What next educational recognition can I get? What next paper can I put up on the wall with a title that gives me recognition, that makes me feel like I've accomplished something? Just you being alive, just you right now watching this video being alive is an accomplishment enough. Because if you really understood what they did to you, how they stripped you of your fundamental rights, and how they put you into a system basically with nothing. Okay, they put you into a system here, into a system they created without giving you the tools, if you will, the necessary tools to accomplish success. Education was supposed to be firstly directed for the promotion and the respect and the understanding of rights and fundamental freedoms of a human being. And secondarily, education was supposed to be directed for the promotion of a person to operate in society, in that working field, in that work environment. Now, when we were young and we went through our secular education, this government offered, government sponsored, and government endorsed and controlled education. They seem to have forgotten the part of our rights and fundamental freedoms as human beings, and focused more on, or only on, our operation or on our duties or benefits as a legal person. Because we're told and we're taught from when we're young, why are we in school? You are in school to get an education and to get diplomas or to get degrees, and after that to obtain work in order to pursue and make yourself a living. And within that, we are also taught that while doing this, we should seek to get married, have children, buy a house, a car, and such. That's the basic principles or the basic teaching that is instilled in us when we are young. No one teaches us, there's no teacher that goes before us when we are young and begins to express and explain to us our fundamental rights and freedoms as men and women, that we do not have an obligation and never did have an obligation to pursue after these material goods or to be part of this commercial system, and if we so chose not to be part or to pursue, that we as human beings have guaranteed rights and freedoms, because those who seized and took control of all of this land, water, and, if you will, now even air, that in doing so they promised through contractual obligations that they who would fulfill our fundamental rights and freedoms for whoever would not partake in this created system. And those obligations and those liabilities are clearly expressed within all the covenants and all the laws that they erected. Now, they hid it pretty well because they didn't want us to know on an individual level, but those who go and seek to learn and seek to understand what the heck it is that is going on in this country and in other countries, if you invest your energy and time in it, you should be able to discern it, because it is hidden, but it is not hidden that hard. And there are many, many people on the internet right now who are pointing little pieces of this puzzle out. They may not have the full understanding, but they are pointing to different pieces of that puzzle. And by acquiring a piece here and acquiring a piece there, you can get the bigger picture. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That is a covenant that Canada is under obligation to respect. Now, in that covenant, it states that everyone, that means you and that means me, we have the right to own our property alone or in association with others. Now, the government of Canada, your municipality, they say that they own your property in association with you. If you own a house, they're saying that they own that house with you in association. For example, if you are to contact them and tell them, this is my property, and I choose to own it alone and not in association with you, therefore I have no obligation to any taxation account that you would send to me claiming that it's fees or taxes that I must pay because my property is being held publicly with you, in association with you. You have that right. Now, no one's ever told you that right, I'm sure, because it's all about money and control. And when you look at our fundamental rights and freedoms as a human being, and you see how they were stripped away from us and removed away from us, you will always see and come back to the fact that it was about control, like authority, power, and money. that there was a way for them to make money off of a natural right, off of a natural need, off of a natural gift, if you will say, that was ours. They figured if we take that away, we can have a way, we can produce an operation of law in order to charge them, to make them pay for that same right to get back, whether it be through banknotes or whether it be through their energy in work. So that's exactly what they did. So you have the right to own your property alone. And if you try to express that right, those in de facto position here in Canada, will get upset at you and will try to fight you. Not physically fight you, but fight you with lawyers and with paperwork to try to deny you that right. Now, it's possible that when they begin to fight you or try to deny you that right, they are doing it in ignorance because they've never read these laws. They themselves have been educated through the government secular education, and that education is controlled. The DRR states that it was the state's responsibility to teach those, especially lawyers, police officers, army personnel, and those in public service about human rights and fundamental freedoms and the expression thereof. So there was an obligation for them to know that you don't have to hold your property in association with them. If they attack you or continue to threaten you, it's quite possible, like I said, they don't even know the law. And you're going to have to follow this through expressing your rights and freedoms before a judge or before a tribunal or whatever it may be, by showing them that, excuse me, you may not be aware of the fact that I have no obligation to hold my property in association with you, but the law clearly states that I, as a human being, have no obligation and no liability towards you. Now, that doesn't only work with property. That works with anyone who wants to interfere with your life. We need to understand, again, and relearn the fact that no one has the right to interfere with us. No one. We've lost that understanding. We've lost that grasp of reality for whatever reason it may be. I have my own personal reasons why I believe that's happened to us, but nevertheless, it is there. Whether it's fear that keeps us from saying, hey, hang on a second, what gives you the right? Or lack of knowledge by saying, oh no, they do have the right. But as a human being, every one of us who is watching this video, we possess, okay? Just like the code says that every human being possesses a juridical personality, well, we also possess the right to be free, and the right not to be interfered with arbitrarily, ourselves, or our family, or our property. That is a right that we possess, and we can express. We can express with our mouth, we can express on a piece of paper with words to those in de facto authority. That is our right to express. And we, across Canada, as individuals, we need to learn that fundamental truth again. That we have the right to be free, and no one has a right to make a liability or a demand upon us unless we've agreed to it, consented to it, said yes to it. Taxes, for example, when they send you a tax bill, a tax account, or when they send anything to your name, understand that name again is assigned to you. It's issued to you. It's not you. It's something they've attached to you. It's something that they're trying to make you function through and take your energy through. And you're supposed to be a beneficiary of that name. You're not supposed to be liable for that name. If any liability falls on that name, it should be to the ones who are the owner of that name. However, they've done just the opposite. Any liability that comes against that name, they try to say you, the human being, are obligated to it or must take that liability, and you don't. The juridical personality, the legal person, is something that you must look at as something that you can use if it profits you. You have the right to recognition as a juridical personality before the law, no obligation. So when you want to take that recognition as a juridical personality because it benefits you, then that is your right as a human being to enter into that recognition and to express that recognition. If you feel or you understand that by entering into recognition as a juridical personality, as a legal person, that is actually stripping me of my right and fundamental freedom as a human being, then you have no obligation to enter into that recognition, and you can stand where you are with all your fundamental rights and freedoms and refuse to take recognition as a juridical personality. That is something that we all possess, and we all have the right to operate under. Now this goes with the Canadian citizen, because if you're considered a Canadian citizen, it's because you, as a human being, have entered in to recognition as a juridical personality, a legal person. And by doing that, you left your fundamental rights and freedoms as a human being, and you entered into another designation called Canadian citizen, who does not have equal status or equal rights and freedoms as the human being. It actually has less rights and freedoms as the human being, because the human being, he can own property, just using this as example, alone or in association. The Canadian citizen, he cannot. He's obligated to hold his property in public with the government in that way. So a Canadian citizen has less rights and freedoms than a human being. And it works in every designation that you take. The only designation that, if you will, that you can point to and use articles of law to say that I am free and you must recognize my freedom, is that of an everyone, a human being, or, if you will, a man or a woman. So a human being, it is declared in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights that, Article 11, that a human being has the right to food, housing, clothing, and the continued improvement of living conditions. That's what the Article of Law says. Okay? Now, a Canadian citizen, if he doesn't work, or if it, I like to rephrase that, if it doesn't work or pursue after a living, for example, it was working, it was pursuing after a living, but it got sick, the human being, or it lost its job. Now, that Canadian citizen has the right to 55% of the salary he was making, irregardless of if it's enough to pay his bills, including getting enough food, paying his hydro, paying clothes, and the like. If it's not enough, too bad for you. Now, once his unemployment insurance runs out, if he was still unlucky enough and could not find a job, and did not enter into one of those retraining programs that they have for their persons, he will find himself with no other choice but to go on to welfare, the social system. I'm not sure if they still call it welfare, but welfare. And that welfare will be even less now, most likely, than he was getting for that 55% of his salary. And that welfare for the Canadian citizen does not give him fundamental rights to food, to clothing, to housing, and to a continued improvement of his living condition year by year. It actually puts him directly into poverty. It doesn't give the person enough money to feed the human being, doesn't give the person enough money to pay for a decent rent, or to pay for the hydro, or to get out of poverty. They remain stuck in poverty. So there you see the difference. The human being would have what to say and complain about, and say that, well, listen, you're under obligation to respect my fundamental rights and freedoms, which are the like. Now, a Canadian citizen, when he falls down and winds up into that system, has nowhere to go but to just accept what they have done. And the system that they've instilled or created is not an expression of the fundamental rights and freedoms of a human being. It is less, much less, than what a human being is entitled to. But because you accept, or we are given, or we are assumed, or we are placed under the designation of person, therefore there remains no more obligation upon Canada to rectify that situation. There's no more obligation upon Canada, the state party, if you will, to fulfill the expression of your rights and fundamental freedoms as a human being, because you are no longer considered that. This is going on all around us. And if we look today, we just need to walk through our city, whatever city you may be in, and you know of an area, or more than one, probably several, where poverty is affecting it. And poverty is stricken the human beings living there. And they're not having enough dollar bills in order to sustain their life, and not making enough money or being given enough money through the social systems to support their fundamental rights and freedoms. But yet, the banks, who do nothing, who create money out of thin air by putting strokes on a keyboard and telling you have money now, those banks are making billions of dollars on the backs of Canadian people by service charges and creating fake money and the like. So they can make billions of dollars in this system, and so can the gas and the oil companies, and the list continues and continues, by drawing the natural resources, by using people's energy and the like. But the human beings here in our cities across Canada must suffer poverty and drug abuse because they feel a hopeless situation. I think that it's good to, if there was a real reset button, to actually push it. Like I said, I believe it will push itself, so